Hi, my name is Marta and I am the chef and author of Sense and Edibility, a site where I teach you everything I know about cooking, baking, and cocktail making. And today's video is all about quesitos. Quesitos are Puerto Rican...
Did you say quesitos?
Why are you in here?
I heard you talking about quesitos and I thought you were done with them. Can I have one?
Even if I was done with them, I got a whole thing going on here. Like I'm working.
So you're not done with them.
Little girl.
Okay.
Jesus be his annex. Help me.
Just call me when you're done.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to call you when you're done, and then I'm going to go outside and feed them to the birds right in front of you. Don't come back in here again. Yeah. Where was I? I'm a saint. I'm a saint. Quesitos are a Puerto Rican pastry made of puff pastry and sweetened cream cheese filling. They're topped with a nice glaze, and a lot of Puerto Ricans eat them for breakfast, but if you're like me, you eat them whenever you feel like eating them because they're that good. Now, funny backstory to these quesitos specifically. It took me 3 years to develop the recipe to get it perfect for me. I tasted them when I went back to Puerto Rico to visit my husband's family. At the time, he was my fiance. I think he was he was my fiance. And their panaderia or bakery is called Las Villas, and that's in Rio Piedras, Puerto Rico. And I tasted their quesitos. Now, I've had quesitos before in New York, but these quesitos just tasted different for some reason. I don't know, maybe it was because I was in the motherland. I don't know what it was. But once I tasted those quesitos, I had to have them like all the time. Every day that I was there, we went to Las Villas maybe 2 or 3 times. I'm not lying. 2 or 3 times a day to get these quesitos. Yeah, I gained 15 pounds in 2 weeks. Yeah, it was pretty bad. But I came back with a mission to replicate these quesitos. And, you know, there were so many things that went into creating this quesito recipe. From the puff pastry, should I make it from scratch? Should I use store-bought? To the cream cheese filling, should I mix the cream cheese? Should I just cut it? Should I use a different type of cheese? To the glaze, should I use honey or corn syrup? It was a lot of trial and error. My husband claims that I got it right after the 3rd batch, but it went on for years until I came up with this recipe. And I think I succeeded because it is a very popular recipe on the internet. I would love to show it to you and bring you into the quesito fold. But before we get to the video, I would appreciate it very much if you would click subscribe and sign up for notifications so that you can get notified every time I post a new video. This is video number 1 or episode 1 of the puff pastry series here on my channel. So there's going to be a lot more puff pastry recipes coming. I showed you in the last video how to make the puff pastry because I firmly believe that homemade puff pastry is 20,000 times better than store-bought. So refer to that first so that you can have your fresh homemade puff pastry. And let's get into this video. So the first thing you're going to need to do is add a 1/4 cup of cold water, a 1/4 cup of granulated sugar, which is 50 grams, and 1/2 cup or 170 grams of light corn syrup, or you could use honey for this recipe. What you're doing now is making a sugar glaze. All you want to do is bring this up to a boil over medium heat. You want to stir to dissolve the sugar completely, and once the sugar is dissolved, just let this come up to a rapid boil. The goal is to bring this sugar up to a boil and evaporate most of the water in the glaze so that it kind of coats the quesitos without running off of them or making it soggy. So stir it, and when the sugar drips from your spatula slowly like this, that's when it's ready to come off the stove. Now, the next step is the easiest. All you need to do is cut 12 batons of cream cheese from one 8-ounce brick, which is 226 grams of cream cheese. You just take a flat edge. Don't use a knife, because when you go to grab the cream cheese off of it, you might slice your hand or you might cut your countertop. Just make 1/4-inch batons out of the cream cheese and set this aside. Now you need to make an egg wash, which is going to seal the quesitos together. That's just a large egg yolk with 1 tablespoon or 15 milliliters of cold water whisked together until smooth. Set that aside, but keep the fork because you're going to need it later. Also, you're going to need granulated sugar. This is about 1/2 cup, and you may need more or less depending on your sweet tooth. Now, liberally flour your countertop, and what I like to do is press the center of my portion of puff pastry to kind of loosen it up a little bit before I start rolling it out. Liberally flour the top of the puff pastry portion as well. Roll the puff pastry portion out into a rectangle that is 24 inches by 15 inches or 61 centimeters by 38 centimeters. Use a very sharp knife or a pastry wheel, which is what I'm using, to cut the dough into equal, okay, maybe not as equal because I suck at cutting straight lines, rectangles of equal size. Once you have your rectangles cut, put your batons of cream cheese on one long edge of the rectangle. Now you want to take your sugar. I usually find that 1/2 teaspoon of sugar is perfect for our family. You can add a little less or a little more if you like your sweeter. Just put it right up against the baton of cream cheese. Take your egg wash that you prepared earlier and brush the short edges of each rectangle of dough. Before you move on to brushing the other side, fold this over because you don't want the egg wash to dry while you're brushing each of the sides. Brush the next short sides and fold it over and continue with the second row of dough. Now you want to brush your egg wash on the long edge of each rectangle of dough. It's becoming very repetitive, me saying rectangle of dough. Now all that's left to do is roll the rectangle dough into a cigar shape, and what you want to do is rock it once you get to the egg washed edge. This seals the cigar so that when it goes into the hot oven and begins to puff, it doesn't unroll itself. And you'll see why that's important later on. For now, transfer correctly? Transfer your quesitos to a parchment lined half sheet pan and make sure they're spaced out evenly so that when they bake, they don't roll over into each other. Take the remaining egg wash and liberally brush it on each of the quesitos. As the quesitos bake, the egg wash adds color to the exterior. Now take that fork and poke venting holes into the quesitos so they don't explode as they bake. Transfer the pan to a 400-degree oven, which is 204 degrees Celsius, and bake for 20 to 25 minutes. And this one that I'm flicking is the reason why you roll your quesitos firmly so that it doesn't unroll as it bakes. Transfer your quesitos to a cooling rack and allow them to cool for 10 to 15 minutes. Okay, arrange it properly. Oh my gosh, I'm burning the crap out of my hands. And stir your sugar glaze that you prepared earlier because sometimes it forms a film. And what you want to do is liberally, generously brush the glaze onto each of the quesitos exteriors. This gives it a nice glossy appearance and it also tastes nice and sweet. Now you may not use all this sugar glaze, but that's okay because you can store it in the fridge for 1 to 2 weeks. And now your quesitos are ready to enjoy. I'm excited. I always get excited. Okay, so I'm trying to pick which one I want to show off. This one. This one looks pretty. This is what the quesito looks like when it's finished and glazed. Now, it's gonna get messy. Mm. Oh my god. I love It's just like the first time I had them. I love them so much. I'm gonna finish eating this one. Sorry. And when I come back, I'll answer some frequently asked questions I get about this quesitos recipe. No two panaderias in Puerto Rico or in New York or anywhere where you'll find a huge Puerto Rican population makes their quesitos the same way. I've eaten quesitos in many places in Puerto Rico, and there's always something different. So mine is no exception. Some people like to cut their puff pastry into squares and fold it into the center so that the cheese is exposed. I don't like doing that because it caramelizes the cheese too much, and because I love puff pastry, so I want a lot of dough when it comes to my quesitos. Some people sprinkle sugar on top of their quesitos before they're baked. I feel like it has enough sugar with the sugar added to the cream cheese in the filling and the glaze that's going to go on top of it. But if you have a wicked sweet tooth, add more sugar. You can sprinkle turbinado sugar, which is a larger crystal sugar, or you can, sprinkle regular granulated sugar over it. Like I said, I think it's fine the way it is. I feel like it pushes it over the edge if you add too much sugar to it. So it's just a matter of where you grew up or what you fell in love with eating, and that's how you make your quesito. So this is how I make my quesito. I roll it into a cigar shape and I bake it. You don't have to top your quesitos with the glaze. The glaze is traditional. That is usually how it's made in Puerto Rico. But the glaze adds another level of sweetness. And it also makes it look pretty. But if you want to cut down on the amount of sugar in the quesito or on the quesito, you can omit the glaze. It won't be as sweet as it should be though. So that's just a personal preference. If you're watching your calories, you probably shouldn't make this at all because it has calories. But if you want to cut down on the sugar content, you can omit the glaze and just be mindful that it's just not going to be as sweet as it should be. And don't blame me. You don't have to use homemade puff pastry to make this recipe. If you want to make this recipe using store-bought frozen puff pastry, you're only going to need one box. And in that box, I think it's a 17.1 ounce box. I think it's like 494 grams. Anyways, in each box comes 2 separate packages of 1 sheet of puff pastry. You're just gonna roll it out a little bit just to kind of flatten it out. It has those folds and creases, so you want to flatten that out. And then you're gonna cut each sheet into 6 rectangles. So you're only gonna get 6 per sheet, which is a dozen per box, which is the same amount as if you use 1 portion of my puff pastry dough. You get a dozen. Hope that makes sense. So yeah, just use 1. Thaw it out in the refrigerator overnight so it's nice and soft when you go to, not soft, but it's not frozen. And roll out each sheet, cut it into 6 rectangles, and you're good to go. I don't blend my cream cheese mixture filling because when you do that, it becomes more liquefied, right? It becomes softer, which means it's more likely to ooze out of your quesito than if you leave it whole. I think it's just an added step that is totally unnecessary because you get the same results with a firmer filling, which means it doesn't bust your quesito open or ooze out of your quesito, and it just makes life easier. There's no need to cream the cream cheese with the sugar. I never do that. And again, very highly rated on Google. So I'm doing something right with these quesitos, and I want you to try them as is. You can try these with gluten-free puff pastry. Yes, I have never personally done it because I never had a need to. I did actually use gluten-free puff pastry, and I mean, it came out fine. They weren't as crispy or flaky as I would like them, but in a pinch, if somebody has a gluten allergy, they work perfectly fine. So yes, you can use gluten-free puff pastry. Yeah. To store your quesitos. The proper answer is store them in the refrigerator because they contain cream cheese. I store my quesitos on the countertop. Number one, because they only last like a day. We plow through these things. Like a dozen is nothing to us. We can finish that for breakfast and dessert. And as a matter of fact, my daughter, the greedy one, is going to ask for one for dessert, and she's going to probably try to sneak two tomorrow, and we're going to have an issue because she always does that. She always steals somebody else's quesito and pretends like she doesn't know what happened. But so they never last in our home. That's why I store them on the countertop, because they don't go longer than 24 hours here. If you don't think you're going to eat them within 24 hours, pop them into a food storage container or a food storage bag and put them in the fridge. I personally don't like cold quesitos because the puff pastry kind of gets really hard. The glaze gets really sticky and it sticks to your teeth. And the cream cheese gets really firm. So it's just not a great experience for me. I would rather, truth be told, I would rather risk food poisoning, which is not going to happen because we've cooked the cream cheese. I mean, it's not going to happen. But I would rather risk it to have a more pleasant experience eating the quesitos than I would put it in the fridge. But the right answer is to put it in the refrigerator and store it there. You can freeze quesitos after rolling them before baking them. Freeze them on the sheet pan, act like you're gonna bake them, right? Put them on the sheet pan and put them in the freezer, and then freeze them until they're solid. Then pop those into a food storage bag, a freezer safe food storage bag, and freeze them for up to 6 months. When you're ready to make your quesitos, pull them out of the freezer, thaw them in the refrigerator, I would say 12 hours overnight, and then bake them as instructed. You gotta brush the egg wash on them and bake them as instructed. To freeze them after baking, which I kind of don't recommend because when you thaw baked quesitos, those are not as crisp, but you can do it. Bake them as instructed. Do not glaze them. Leave them on the cooling rack, freeze them, put them in a not Ziploc because that's a brand name. Put them in a food storage bag and freeze them baked for up to 3 months, not 6 months. And then you can thaw them at room temperature or in the fridge and then brush them with the glaze. If you freeze them with the glaze, it's kind of, they're gonna come out really soggy when you thaw them. You don't have to brush the quesitos with the egg wash on top. You do have to use it for sealing and rolling the quesitos. You could use water, but I found it, I don't like using water because it makes it gummy, but you can if there's something going on. You could also use milk. A milk wash is another way that we add color to baked goods in professional bakeries. And a milk wash is simply that. You just brush it with whole milk or with half and half. But yeah, you do need something wet to stick the dough so it rolls and doesn't do like that goofy one I showed you when it came out of the oven. Make sure you're, rocking it once you get to the edge, the egg washed edge, so that it seals it, so that when it bakes, because it's puff pastry, it's gonna puff, so that it doesn't puff over. Yes, that's what you do. So I think I've answered all the questions that I get about, one more question. Yes, I almost forgot this. You can add batons of guava paste to make cream cheese and guava quesitos. You're going to need to cut the cream cheese thinner than I did. So that was about a 1/4 of an inch. Yeah, that was a 1/4 of an inch baton. You're going to have to cut it smaller than that and then add a baton the same size of guava paste, not guava jelly, guava paste. And then you roll it up and you have cream cheese and guava quesitos, which are also really good. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed my world famous, because I was an army wife and I went around the world and people tasted them and then they went around the world. So they're world famous quesitos. You can find the full recipe for these quesitos on my site, senseandedibility.com. I'm also going to link it down below in the description box, along with some of the tools that I used in this video. I would really, really love it if you would give this video a thumbs up to let me know that you liked it and that all my time and effort was worth it. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel and sign up for notifications so you can get notified every time I post a new video. And in the meantime, before you click out, don't forget to watch for the outtakes, because I always have some. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you on episode 2 for another puff pastry recipe. I haven't figured out what it is yet, but I'm gonna pretend like I know it, and I'm being secretive, and I'm holding you in suspense. So, thanks for watching. Bye. What? It's flaky puff pastry. That's the goal. It means I did it right. I have. These are the best quesitos in the world. And I don't usually say that about myself, but they make me feel things inside that may be a little bit ungodly. Okay. That little girl has always been obsessed with quesitos. Check this video out from when she was like 5 or 6. Come here. I'm baking something. Can you smell it?
Oh, quesitos!
I mean, she got it honest. Her dad and I are greedy as hell, so I mean, I can't even be mad at her. But yeah.